Before we start a feud about pumpkin spice lattes again, today we are going to be talking about Andor and the Rakatan Empire. And today we are joined by our guest, Dennis. So, how you doing, Dennis?
I'm good. I'm good.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is makes a couple of appearances for Dennis. Has been on to talk about some KOTOR music, some KOTOR 2 music, and today going to be talking a little bit about Andor. So happy to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Andor, and it's just funny that like Andor, it's like and or, but it's like those two words, like, but it's actually a last name. So I find it cool, but I'm just a nerd, about English and words.
Slash or.
And slash or. Yeah. Maybe that's what his sister's name is and slash or.
Yeah, that could be. It would be a good name if you were a spy, I guess, because then you can make it be whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's better than Clem, I think.
Clem.
But...
now, my dog's name is Clementine, and we quite frequently call her Clem. So Clem is a perfectly fine name. Maybe not for a spy, but for a good pug dog, definitely.
Okay, pug babies, yes. So when I heard about the Andor announcement, I was excited for it because it seemed to be like, oh, we're going to get some James Bond, spy stuff in Star Wars, and I loved Rogue One. How did you guys, when Andor was announced, how did you guys react?
I was super happy with it. I love Andor. I love Cassian as a character. I love Rogue One. I kind of missed that era of Star Wars, to be honest. I feel like the fandom was at its least toxic.
Yeah.
In 2016, 2017, before The Last Jedi came out. Yeah, it gives me good feelings as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, definitely something I was looking forward to. We talked a little bit back in episode 142. We were talking about Rogue One and kind of Jyn Erso's story, and we talked a little bit about what we liked about Rogue One and what we were looking forward to in the Cassian Andor series. And yeah, same as you, Cassie. I was looking forward to something that was a little bit more, kind of James Bondish, kind of. Spy central, sort of setting up the rebellion, and we're still getting a lot of the politics, which is fun, and obviously something now that we're older, as the prequels, that was one of the interesting things about the prequels, and now we're getting to see how that kind of ultimately played out as we lead into the original trilogy timeline. And I just think that it's really interesting to see the way that the Empire took over. I find really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is kind of a carryover from Rogue One. I think Tony Gilroy really gets how to make Star Wars feel like there are stakes. Like, some people are like, ooh, Andor's dark and gritty. And I'm like, I mean, it's still Star Wars fun time, but I think it's there are more serious stakes and kind of more... it's kind of like the novelizations come to life, I think. It's just a little bit more psychological, more real, Mm-hmm. How are you guys liking the tone of Andor?
I like it much more in episodes 3 and 4. It gave a more galactic scale kind of feeling to it. Tone-wise, yeah, I think that the gritty tone everyone keeps talking about is a welcome change. Not that Star Wars doesn't need to be, quote, for kids, which is always been the tagline, but I think that it's nice to give a different environment to look at, a different viewpoint.
Yeah, different lens.
Yeah, it is. It has been interesting to see. And you mentioned Cassia. It's kind of like a book come to life, and I think that that's a fair comparison to make, because obviously we know what Cassian Andor's ultimate fate's going to be. We know what Mon Mothma's fate's going to be, but all of these other characters, we don't know anything about them. We don't know what their story is, where they came from, how they fit into this puzzle, and very Games of Thrones esque. Like any of these characters, might not make it week to week. So it has these really high stakes, even though you kind of know, what's going to happen to Cassian as we go through this and into Rogue One. But it feels like they did a really good job of kind of raising the tension level on the story that we kind of know, we're familiar with, but we don't really know like the inner workings of it. It's like a car, right? You know that a car drives, but unless you really understand how like the engine is operating, you're not kind of seeing underneath of the hood, so to speak. And I feel like that's what we're getting to see now with Andor.
Yeah, and there's just like lots of great story points, great characters, and everything. And I guess we're kind of just dipping our toes into the story still, kind of seeing all the different characters and everyone. But what have been some of your favorite aspects of the story so far?
I love seeing like it's not just politics at this point even. It's very like subtle politics. I loved the whole thing with Luthen and Mon Mothma, where they're like putting up a front, and I loved seeing him like prepare to start putting up that front again, and just have this like really really behind the scenes conversation that like they can't trust anybody, so they have to like pretend like she went there to buy something. And I don't know, I love all this super secretive, in like the worst place in the galaxy kind of a thing.
Yeah, I like kind of the touching on the politics and kind of the stakes that we're getting. I like the way that we're kind of seeing how the Empire is structured through like these different like security protocols, like in Cyril's character. I think that's really interesting. I think that it is one of the story things that I've liked so far is just kind of seeing how Cassian got swept up, from kind of his, childhood life and into this kind of adopted family, and how that's kind of propelling his story forward. And then obviously, the stuff that we're getting with Luthen's character and kind of recruiting Cassian into the Rebel Alliance. That has been really interesting, and I think that now that we've gotten to episode 4 and we're seeing Cassian as kind of this this kind of mercenary type of character for this, how that's going to fit into the Rebel Alliance. You have kind of this smaller group of people, and there's going to be a lot of those. So I like that stuff. I really like kind of just in that opening sequence as the security force are coming into the city, and the whole city is kind of rebelling against them, and setting off the bell warnings and stuff throughout the town, as people are getting fed up and fighting back and kind of doing what they can. I find all of that stuff super super fascinating, and a weird kind of political time in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, politics kind of impacts all facets of life in the galaxy. I like that. And I do like the more serious stakes, Sometimes I'm like, oh, dark and gritty can be overrated sometimes. Like, sometimes it just feels like a fad, but I feel like Andor has the right balance. Like, it's acknowledged, like, there's more mature aspects to this galaxy, but it's not like we have to stay there, But I just love seeing Coruscant again.
Same.
And I could spend a whole lot of time in Luthen's shop, and I like how you mentioned he had to prepare. He's wearing purple, he's getting the rings, getting the wigs, and then kind of getting in character, and it just felt like Stellan Skarsgård. Kind of. I was like, I'm gonna bring up Mamma Mia because why not? I'm like,
what? Yeah.
This could have been the same character from Mamma Mia, at some point, before Sophie was born, and he's in the galaxy far, far away. And some people have never seen this nor care about it, but I've
never seen it. Yeah.
It's a cinematic treasure, and it deserves to
That's
have a
right.
third installment in its trilogy, and it will be better than the Godfather trilogy. So, yeah. Anyways,
I
yeah,
I do I do really like that scene. And from what I've seen, everyone seems to really like that scene of Stellan Skarsgård of Luthen, kind of changing into his regalia and going through the motions of putting on this face because that's what everyone in the galaxy is having to do now. Mon Mothma, we got touches on that a little bit, like in the Padme Amidala book series that we got the Queen's Hope and those, and kind of the same thing, right, where she's having to put on her happy face and go to these dinner parties and banquets as basically the the freedoms around the galaxy are just crumbling away underneath of her, and you're getting to see that play out now, kind of through Mon Mothma's eyes, and exactly how big of a role in that Luthen is going to end up playing. Time will tell on that, but just really cool stuff and super fascinating, I think.
yeah. And I'm just so glad to like have Mon Mothma wearing an outfit that is not just white with silver tassels, and getting more of her background, and just like, I don't know, just kind of more her as a character rather than just like saying like many Bothans died, So good
Right.
for her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to see how of an important of a character she is to the Rebel Alliance. And we even saw her in Rogue One, but you still didn't even get kind of the full scope of that, right? It came
Yeah,
across that basically she was in charge, but you didn't know kind of to what extent, and things like that, and the events that got all of those people into that room before they went off to find the Death Star plan. So yeah,
for
I think
sure.
that it's going to be really interesting to see kind of her story play out, and how that's going to intersect ultimately with Cassian's.
And then, of course, congrats to Genevieve O'Reilly for taking a character that was initially cut out of episode 3
Yeah,
and being able to reprise the role twice, and the second time being able to like really flesh out the character. Like I'll bet that back in 2004 when they were filming uh episode 3, that once she finally figured out in like the next year that it was cut out of the film, she probably never thought she'd be able to play it again. So
but here she is,
yeah.
and she's on Disney Plus.
That's
Right,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, getting that character back out. I would really like to see if they. I don't know if they ever would into like the full version of it, but restored some of those scenes, or just made those scenes more easily accessible, like underneath of like the Andor tab of the Disney Plus, so you could go back and watch the stuff that got left on the cutting room floor for episode 3
If
of
I
her
had to
parts.
guess, they're probably going to show some of them, or at least cut to some of them in whatever gallery thing they do for Andor, because
Yeah,
I'm sure that her returning again is going to be a huge part of it.
yeah. And she's not just returning for like a little blip. It's like
Right.
they're fully fleshing out like her background, who she's married to, like how the marriage has been, her interior life, not just like her as a rebellion boss, queen.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a queen, but she's a senator. Um, I at least I think so. If I
She
mean,
is.
she's like
She's a senator.
she's a metaphorical queen, but maybe not a literal queen like Queen of Naboo. But yeah, but
Yeah, that's
senator.
right.
So
She is the queen in our hearts, and the queen of the Rebel Alliance, I think. Yeah, so getting to see Mon Mothma kind of rise up, and her backstory, obviously, Cassian Andor's story, and I'd mentioned, kind of ultimately we know what happens to both of those characters, so maybe the stakes aren't quite as high for those, but they've done a really good job of introducing new characters and new locations to kind of keep the intrigue up, which I think is really cool. So, Dennis, let's start with you. What about these other characters? Have any stood out, or any that you find particularly interesting, or want to know more about? Or what do you think about the new additions here?
I'm very interested to see where some of these other rebels are gonna end up that we just got introduced in episode 4. Um, I I don't know exactly if this was pointed out or not, but I'm pretty sure they're probably partisans, some of Saw's people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really interested to see like what happens to this group of people that Cassian or Clem has just joined up with. Um, on the new character front, I was not a fan of the first two episodes, mostly because I felt that they gave us a lot of information about things that didn't end up mattering, and a lot of these new characters uh, were a thing for that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for the longest time, I thought that Tim and Brasso were the same person because they look very
Okay.
similar to me. But
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the characters on that planet, I don't really have any sort of I don't really care all that much about. But it's these other rebels we're getting introduced to that I care more about.
Okay, so you're more in on these fighters that we just met in this last
Yes.
week. Because Clem's in camp there. He just wants to eat his food. He will study for his exams later in the night. Yeah, I think that those characters are really great, and the stakes are pretty high because we don't know anything about them or how they're going to fare in this kind of challenge that's in front of them. Like you said, they could very well be partisans out of Saw's camp, and we know that Forrest Whitaker is back as Saw Gerrera, so we will meet him at some point and see, I guess, how these stories all intermingle with them. I will say I really like the first couple of episodes. I like the people there. Not Tim. He was kind of lame, but I did like Bix. I thought that she was awesome. I thought that his friend Brasso was awesome, and I have a pretty strong hunch that we're going to make it back there and reunite with some of these characters, and maybe they go along to form the Rebel Alliance with Cassian here at some point. I feel like they did a lot of kind of character building, especially of Bix, to just kind of to cast all of those characters aside after 3. Plus B2 emo, we need to get him back in action for sure. And definitely kind of his adopted mother there, who is so awesome, played by what is her
Fiona
name?
Shaw.
Yeah, Fiona Shaw. Really awesome stuff there. So I think that those stories are going to kind of keep fleshing out as we go through, because I think there's a lot of episodes of these. But what about you, Cassia? Any characters are sticking out, or ones that you want to learn more about? Any you want to throw out of an airlock, like Mon Mothma's husband, because he's the worst, but...
Yeah, I forget the name of the guy who altered his work uniform, who works for the security. I'm
Cyril,
still yeah, I'm getting the hang of everyone's names, but I think
there's a lot of people.
Yeah, he seems like an interesting character, and I just respect for him for altering his work uniform to fit him better, because if you look at the other people working there, like, it does not fit them very well. So good for Cyril. Fiona Shaw's character, love that. I am kind of sad that Fiona Shaw's in Star Wars, like, and now she can't be Kreia, but the door is open for other people now, I guess. And then, like, long hair Cassian, kind of younger Cassian. I think there's going to be more of an arc than I would have anticipated, and I'm just seeing a lot of similarities he has with Jyn. And I also really love the character of Luthen, because sometimes I think Star Wars is really kind of mentored out, but I'm just so thankful we have a mentor who's different, and Stellan Skarsgård was the best person to choose, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you can have Stellan Skarsgård do anything for you, I think you should probably do that for sure. A couple of the other characters I really like. You mentioned Cyril, and I like him, and I'm very interested to see what his trajectory is now. As you know, he kind of got fired and basically pulled down the entire organization around him as he got fired. But you know, he's going back down to the lower levels of Coruscant to visit his mom, and then also Deidre, who is you know, one of the people there on that Imperial Security Bureau or Council or whatever there, you know, and she's trying to do kind of the same thing as Cyril, right? She's trying to find out all this information and go after these little rebel cells, and keeps being met with resistance. So I'm interested to see in how their stories play out, if they're going to go in like full bore into the Empire, or if that's going to kind of spurn them to resent the Empire. I'm really interested to see how those stories go.
I'm wondering if Cyril is even going to choose a side at all, or if he might just even want revenge on Cassian as a person.
That could be. Yeah, I could see that because you know, in pursuit of Cassian, that's kind of what cost him his livelihood, his respect, I guess, within the organization, and obviously cost the organization. Yeah, so that very well could be. So that would be interesting to see. I'm very excited to see how those stories unfold, and I'm very excited to see how the rest of this show is going to look, because as you mentioned, we went back to Coruscant. It was awesome to kind of see the fly-in on that. It was interesting to see kind of the lower levels of Coruscant, you know, something that we've not really seen too much. You know, we saw a little bit of it like in episode 2, right, Attack of the Clones, but that was very much bright and lively Coruscant. This is very much pressed on Coruscant. It's much more you know, kind of angular and gray, and the things that you see in countries where dictators rise to powers, right? You get kind of that brutalistic look on things. So I think that it's interesting from that standpoint, and I'm interested to see all these locations and how they do. But Dennis, how about it? Visuals and the story so far. Is there anything that you really like, or any of the scenes, any of the way that like the CG's worked for you? But what do you think about the way that this thing looks?
I was really surprised at how much some of the first episode reminded me of Blade Runner.
Same here.
The first, like the very opening of it, with you know, when he kills those two guys and he's asking about his sister. It's very Blade Runner to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You get that same kind of aesthetic. It's very, very kind of dark and.
It's dark but bright at the same time. Where it's like dark and there's like almost like steam everywhere, and it's very industrial, but there's all these neon lights everywhere. Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It is very Blade Runner-esque.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. And then you get, you know, kind of back on there, that town. What is that? I don't even remember what the name, because there's so many places going on.
It looked very English, with all the brick.
Yeah, for sure.
And the bell tower and everything.
Mm-hmm. The bell tower, and then everyone just has like a straight up British accent too, which is kind of playing on that. Ferrix, that's the name of the town.
Yes,
that I was thinking of. It's very kind of, you know, it looks like a rundown like industrial town. So I'm from like Ohio, but you have like, you know, that same kind of thing like up through, you know, what they call like the Rust Belt, you know, between like Detroit and Cleveland and Pittsburgh, of these big like huge industrial manufacturing towns that, you know, get shuttered, and then, you know, kind of what do they look like. And that's very much what like Ferrix felt like to me, and seeing it, and it looked very, very dirty and very muddy and kind of grimy. So I thought, you know, pretty good way to kind of play on that, and, you know, kind of mirrored, I guess, the way that the people there probably felt as the Empire is starting to, you know, kind of force their boot down onto people.
Yeah, that's one thing I liked, is all the worlds seemed very distinct. You had Coruscant kind of under the Empire. It still looks very refined, but like you said, kind of very brutalistic and kind of concrete, not as bright and gilded as the prequels. And we have like the Iceland of the galaxy. We have the Liverpool, England of the galaxy, it seems. and then we have like a Peter Pan, Lost Boys, like where he grew up, as Casa. And I just like that each of the worlds seemed real and distinct. And I think I was getting a little bit too, especially with Kenobi, like a little bit volume overload. And it's just nice to kind of get something a little bit more real that looks like our real world with a few tweaks. But it looks Star Wars. It doesn't look cheap.
I'm also very much hoping we don't see Tatooine.
Prayer circle. No Tatooine.
Obviously with Obi-Wan, it was one thing because it needs to happen on Tatooine. That's where he is during that time. But we really did get beaten over the head with it quite a bit in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. So
yeah.
It's nice to get different planets and different environments.
Yeah, I'm okay seeing some grass and some trees. That is all right with that is all right with me for sure. The volume is what it is. It's a brilliant thing, and it's really good. And you can definitely tell that some directors are and not even necessarily the directors, but some cinematographers are, better at using it than others, just like any other kind of technology that you're using to make film. But it is nice, I guess, to see, these characters walking around and interacting in a big, huge set and set pieces and places that are, actually in the real world that you could go and visit and see how they've changed it and made it look more Star Warsy. It kind of grounds it in a way, I guess, so to speak. And that's definitely, I think, what the tone of the story and what they're going for is something a little bit more grounded in reality that you could see actually being the case to play out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it absolutely looks really great, and it sounds really great. The sound design for the show has been spectacular, and kind of the soundscapes that have been woven. And luckily we have Dennis here, so hopefully Dennis knows a lot about the music here. So we had the Rogue One score, which was done by Michael Giacchino, which is brilliant, and he's brilliant, and everything that he does is brilliant. And then we've got the Andor score here that's being done by Nicholas Britell. But Dennis, I don't know if you've really had much time to kind of analyze or listen to the way that the soundtrack sounds, but are there any kind of parallels between those two composers, or anything that you're liking from the Andor score that you've heard? Because if anyone's going to know, it's going to be you. It's not going to be Cassie and myself. So.
Yeah, so Nicholas Britell, I haven't heard all that much of his stuff before. I've heard a little bit of his stuff on Succession. Not that I wasn't actually watching the show, but I've heard a bit of his stuff from it. And I don't really notice much of a similarity between the Rogue One score and Andor. But something about this score specifically, to me, doesn't feel like it fits Star Wars somehow. I don't know how to describe it, but even with Ludwig Göransson's Mandalorian score, it was so very different, but somehow it still felt rooted in Star Wars. This to me feels odd. I don't know how to explain it though.
It did kind of feel more Blade Runner-esque to me, especially when the logo was coming up. But I remember, like, when the Mandalorian score first came out, I'm like, this isn't my Star Wars, bring back John Williams. And now I'm like, oh, it's the Mandalorian soundtrack. And I'm like, it feels at home. Maybe for me, with time, it'll fit more. Or maybe I'll just be like, this is Blade Runner. And that's fine.
Yeah, I'm wondering how it's going to progress as we go through the story and we start seeing more things that we can identify strictly with the Rebel Alliance or with the Empire as we go. Will it move more to that sweeping score, or is it going to be just more of this visceral kind of soundscape? It reminds me of what like Hans Zimmer did with Dune, where I can't really pick out any of the songs from Dune. It just had this sound and feel of what Arrakis would have felt like, and this so far to me just looks and feels like what this world of Andor is going to feel like, and maybe we'll get more of those, like I said, more of those big kind of sweeping themes as we go through and start to identify a little bit more with these characters, and it's just kind of laying some groundwork now. I don't know, I can't really put my finger on it, but it is great, and I love the title kind of theme that plays. The title, it's a little long. It could be snipped up a hair as Andor is coming into focus, I think, but I really like it, and I really like the way that it sounds.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I guess anything else you wanted to discuss about Andor, or are we ready to take a quick break?
Yeah, I think that's going to kind of wrap it up for our just a little kind of discussion about Andor. We didn't want to get too deep into the story or into the episodes. We know a lot of other real good podcasts are doing that kind of on a week-to-week basis, but we just wanted to check in and talk a little bit about it because something pretty exciting happened for the KOTOR fans out there in this last episode number 4. So why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk about the Rakatan Infinite Empire.
Okay, today we're going to be referencing the Gizmodo.com article. Andor just dropped one of Star Wars' wildest Easter eggs, and I had it a bit spoiled for me that the Rakatan Empire was going to be mentioned in the 4th episode of Andor, but it was kind of a crazy Easter egg, and I think it's like one of the most deep-cut canonizations of the KOTOR era, but I am so here for it. What were your guys' reactions to this Easter egg?
So I remember back, I think when The Force Awakens came out and like their visual guide or visual dictionary, whichever it was, came out, it showed a map of the galaxy, and on that it showed a planet called Rakata Prime, and I was a little concerned about that because I saw that and I'm like, well, we've never gotten any sort of reference to this. And I was talking to Brian before you came on, Cassia, and I was talking about how with every Star Wars show that's come out, there's been a little bit less internet hype for it, which has been nice because I'm not seeing as many spoilers. I did not see this until the episode came out, and I had to pause it, and I was like, oh my god. That's such an insane reference. And Alex is like, what are you talking about? My fiance. Yeah, I was floored by it.
Yeah, it came out of left field for me too. So I did not watch the episode on Wednesday. I got through like most of the day, and then remembered that it was Wednesday, Andor day. But it was kind of late, so I was like, I'll just watch it in the morning when I'm having my coffee. So I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and then bombshell. Luthen has this Rakatan artifact. Where did that come from? What is that? We know a couple things. We know that it makes KOTOR 119% canon now, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, it was a weird thing, and it is a real weird, in a show that's supposedly not doing any Easter eggs. That seemed like a pretty big Easter egg, and if not an Easter egg, then it must be something pretty important. But it was fun because I'd seen like people on Twitter like posting like pictures of the Rakatans. I'm like, what even is going on? This doesn't make any sense. And then I watched it, and yeah, total bombshell. It was pretty awesome to hear, pretty awesome to see. And we have had the Rakatans. So in the on Dryden Voss's ship in Solo, there was a Rakatan Wraith box. I don't know what a Wraith box is, but that's apparently what it was. That's what it was referenced as in the visual dictionary. So maybe it's been something that's been on the minds of people weaving these stories for a little bit. But yeah, it feels pretty significant for some reason. I don't know. What about you, Cassia? What do you think?
I loved this Easter egg. It didn't feel like an Easter egg. It just felt like a historical lived-in galaxy. Because, in our world, like, our world has been conquered by so many people. But do I wake up each day and think about Alexander the Great? Not really, even though I'm a historical nerd, so I probably think about him a little bit more than usual. But like, that's kind of what the Rakatans are to the Star Wars galaxy. They're like a distant memory that like maybe you think about when you go to a museum or you deal with artifacts. But it was just such a cool visual too, just like a beautiful necklace that I'm like, oh, Jin and Cassian are soulmates. They both have like these little kyber crystal necklaces, and I'm just like, oh, it's a beautiful visual. We'll have to like on our YouTube thing. Sorry, Apple or Spotify podcast listeners, you'll just have to imagine what it looks like. But it's a beautiful blue necklace, and so like before the two part ways, like Luthen gave Cassian that necklace, and it has a massive blue and white kyber crystal that is used in Jedi and Sith blades, you know, and it's like, and Luthen tells Cassian about it. He says, blue kyber, skystone, the ancient world, and celebrates the uprising against the Rakatan invaders. So it's like, just let's have a moment of silence. Like, this makes T3 canon.
Well,
this makes Star Maps canon. This makes Darth Revan canon. This makes Bastila canon. This makes Battle Meditation canon. And before people ask if I'm like jumping to conclusions, like, no, I'm not. You know, it's just everything is canon now. Okay.
Oh,
let's hear it.
Dennis is here to rain on the parade. Come on.
Okay.
I have to disagree, mostly because, like, you know, when they mentioned Darth Bane in the Clone Wars, that didn't make the Darth Bane trilogy canon. It made, you know, the character of Darth Bane exist, or there's been other things like that too, where Revan has been mentioned, like in like the Rise of Skywalker's like visual dictionary and stuff like that. But that doesn't. I think that means that there is a Sith Lord named Revan in canon. I don't think that means that the story that we know is canon, unfortunately. Just like we don't necessarily really even know what the Rakatans are in canon, other than that they invaded. We don't know how many thousands of years ago it was. I feel like the when they quote recanonize something, it gets very tricky to figure out exactly what that canonization means, and whether it just means like it's a mention that'll never be brought up again, or it is literally canonizing like an entire, you know, story involved with things too.
Of course, it doesn't really mean that it's canonizing those things, but we
same
like
with
to
like
imagine
the mention of Malachor too.
That it does for sure. So it's important to know. So the Rakatans, who are the Rakatans? So the Rakatans were introduced in the 2003 excellent video game Knights of the Old Republic. You've probably heard about it if you've been listening to this podcast. More than this one episode. But that's where their story came into being. And the Rakatans, were a domineering civilization that just went and took over planets willy-nilly until they took over the whole galaxy, pretty much. So this is a mark of the uprising against them, and it's referred to in the show Andor as a Kuwati signet. It's a mixture of a kyber crystal and a white skystone. Now, the Kuwatis were a people that were shipbuilders way back. So I don't know if we're going to find any more about this particular Kuwati thing, and how that is, and how this could relate to kind of their shipbuilding background. I'm wondering, because the kyber crystal necklace is pretty big. It is a pretty big kyber crystal, I will say, on this necklace. And we have seen in the the preview trailer that there is a ship with a weird lightsaber beam that comes out of it, and that what this kyber crystal is capable of, because it's very important to Luthen, as he says, it's more important to me than it is to 50,000 credits. So maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it has something to do with his past. I don't know, but I'm with Cassie on this. 119% canon now. KOTOR has to be.
Yeah. So I guess you've been outvoted, Dennis.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am the guest after all, so.
Yeah, we're always completely serious and always introspective and all the things, No, just kidding. Sometimes we're sarcastic. So I don't know what this means, but it's cool that we've kind of have had Rakata Prime mentioned, like you said, Dennis, and maybe one day we'll see it, Lee Han in live action. That would be cool. And I don't know what Luthen's connection is with it, but I'm excited. Luthen's one of my favorite characters in Andor, so I mean, it's just KOTOR is 119% canon. We'll have to make a new KOTOR is totally canon episode, and this will be the thumbnail and will be like not clickbait, and we'll have lots of circles on it, because we're professionals. Yep. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
You gotta fool the algorithm. Fool it.
That's right. That is what the plan is. But yeah, I feel like that was a pretty significant moment. It was kind of something significant to give to Clem, I guess, at that point. What the artifact was. So, and we know that obviously he doesn't have it by the time Rogue One rolls around. So something is going to have to happen to it, and I think that we're probably going to see that. What is that going to be? Who knows? But I hope, I want to say, on the podcast here, we hope that it at least involves a big history lesson, because we love kind of historical stuff, even in this fantasy world that is the Star Wars galaxy. So I think that would be really cool. And then, of course, the internet exploded as they go into the den of antiquities there, and trying to piece together what all of that stuff was. So
like
a lot of good
armor.
Easter eggs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of really cool stuff there. So definitely something cool for us Knights of the Old Republic fans to take away from that, and got everyone who was not familiar with the game and the Rakatans to do a little bit of digging into that, and that's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, where can our listeners find you, Dennis? And do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, as I think I did last time, Murphy. Murphy is our new audio drama. It's coming out, starting to come out on November 16th, where you can find podcasts. And yeah, our team has been working really, really super hard on it, and it's about supernatural stuff. It's like mystery, horror, cryptids, and all that. So yeah, check that out. We have 2 trailers out that you can listen to, and you can follow us on all our social media. That's at Merlin's Monsters, Merlin with a Y. You can find me at DS Mowers Music on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook or wherever you want to find me, pretty much. So
awesome, and thanks so much for coming on and discussing Andor. I was going to try to make a good pun using Andor, but maybe the best pun is the one that is unused, So
you can find you can find the podcast on Twitter and/or Instagram.
Instagram. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So
there we go.
Check us out there if you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive on Rakata Prime, aka Lehan, aka the I don't know, it has like 100 names. Go back to episode 90. We talked a lot about Lehan and how we would want to see it portrayed in a movie, and that was a lot of fun. So definitely go check that out and connect with us online, and keep watching Andor, because it's really good, and let us know what you think about these KOTOR parallels.
Yeah. May the Sky Stone be with you.